Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Here are just a few other examples. The American people elected Donald Trump as their president not once but twice, and yet the FBI and intelligence agencies were politicized by his opponents to undermine his presidency and falsely portray him as a puppet of Putin. Title I of FISA was used illegally to obtain a warrant to spy on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, using a Clinton campaign-funded false dossier as their so-called evidence. Biden campaign advisor Tony Blinken was the impetus for the 51 former senior intelligence officials' letter dismissing Hunter Biden's laptop as disinformation specifically to help Biden win the election. Former DNI James Clapper lied to this committee in 2013, denying the existence of programs that facilitated the mass collection of millions of Americans' phone and internet records, yet was never held accountable. Under John Brennan's leadership, the CIA abused its power to spy on Congress, to dodge oversight, lied about doing it until he was caught, and yet has never been held responsible. Under Biden, the FBI abused its power for political reasons to try to surveil Catholics who attend traditional Latin Mass, labeling them as quote-unquote radical traditionalist Catholics. Personally, just 24 hours after I criticized Kamala Harris and her nomination, I was placed on a secret domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies. Sadly, there are more examples. The bottom line is this must end.
These confirmations are signaling badly needed change for the FBI. Welcome back to Transition Tuesday. The Rob Maness Show is live on Worldview Tube, our X Spaces simulcast, Rumble, YouTube, Truth Social Plus, and Roku. Well, what kind of change, though? That's the question. The American people's trust in the FBI and our national intelligence agencies is at an all-time low, and for good reason. As Lieutenant Colonel Gabbard pointed out in her confirmation hearing that you just saw, the overt politicization of these organizations has resulted in multiple layers of failures to protect the American people and are so brazen, the FBI even denied that the January 1 New Orleans terrorist attack was related to ISIS or even a terrorist attack at all initially, even though the evidence was clear for all of us to see. Intelligence agency leaders have lied and tampered with our elections and are in fact attempting to sabotage the second Trump administration's policy implementation. The evidence is very clear that FBI leaders are insubordinate to the Department of Justice directives over the January 6th case agents and participant identification requests. It even appears leaks about ICE raids to arrest illegal aliens might have been coming from the FBI itself, putting law enforcement agents' lives at high risk. It's unbelievable. This level of abysmal performance of duty intended to keep Americans secure and safe has to be addressed immediately, or people will die needlessly. And I hate to say that because it gets overused especially by the other side politically. Well, my guest today is Chris Peyota, a former senior executive assistant director who retired from the Federal Bureau of Investigation after nearly 25 years of experience. He's a recognized leader who led complex national security investigations, international security programs, and covert operational technology platforms. He's also a PhD and author of the book, Wanted, the FBI I Once Knew. Welcome, Chris, to the Rob Maness Show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you and your audience today.
Hey, man, I have to ask you, I was at the Pentagon on 9/11. Were you in Washington on 9/11? Because you write a lot about the post 9/11 path of the FBI, and I want to get into that. So Are we following the same type of pathways?
No, actually, on the tragic day of September 11th, 2001, I was assigned to the Newark, New Jersey field office, and I saw the smoke rising from the first tower strike out my office window. And it stayed in Newark through February, where then I went to headquarters to help out in the post 9/11 world. So I didn't get to the DC area till about February of 2002.
Okay. Well, it was a tragic day, and I have friends that live in New Jersey that were impacted directly
Mm.
by the attack on New York City, and it's heartrending to even think about it.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'm curious about, and you write a lot about it in your book, and I think it's a discussion the American people need to hear from somebody that really witnessed this up close. Is what happened to the FBI post 2000, 9/11, 2001 that has led us to where we're at today from this whole politicization issue, its duties, its culture. What were the structural and organization and cultural changes that happened after 9/11? Uh, uh, well intended, I'm sure, but they are having an impact on what we're seeing happen today.
Sure, a lot of strategic changes were made after the, perceived and actual failure of 9/11 on the part of the FBI. I mean, basically had our tail kicked, right? The adversary was better than we were. And as a result, people lost their loved ones, family members, friends, and we knew that couldn't happen again. So the FBI had to make some structural changes. It also made a very large operational shift from a traditional law enforcement kind of cops and robbers organization to more of a domestic security and intelligence organization. And it was a very violent shift after 9/11 to become more predictive and preventative. We were working to investigate the 9/11 tragedy, but we were also working to prevent any future further or additional terrorist activities that could have been in the works. So this was a complete and total changeover for the FBI and its people. The problems that came up came from the political, social, and I would say internal FBI dynamics that after 9/11, there was talk about splitting the FBI up into different components. Director Mueller at the time was able to fend off those requests and inquiries from our national leadership. But in doing so, the FBI became much more conciliatory toward political influence. And I think we lost our ability to navigate that political environment as well as the FBI used to. So that's where it started. And that's where it progressed through those years, through the culture changes, through the leadership changes, and also strategically, the FBI changed its hiring practices. And it started hiring people from different backgrounds in the university set and deprioritized the hiring of former law enforcement, former military personnel. So then we saw a ideological shift over time that they couldn't see then, but you can see it now. The changes to the FBI's philosophies, its values, and its beliefs. That's where it started.
Yeah. Yeah. The FBI has always had a national security aspect to its operations, in addition to the old crime fighting, law enforcement piece. That when I think of the FBI as a kid, I think of Elliot Ness.
Right.
The anti-gang task force going after John Dillinger. Those kind of law enforcement activities. But I also think of the FBI looking for Soviet spy sleeper cells
Right.
inside the United States, in the Western Hemisphere, tracking down communist cells that might be trying to spring up and take over other countries in our hemisphere and those kind of things. But one of the things that I think I've noticed, and I wanted to get your take on it since you witnessed it, is this intelligence piece. Has it really? And from my perspective, I think it has anecdotally, but I don't have the data because I'm not on the inside. But it appears that the domestic intelligence aspect and the apparatus within the FBI has completely overtaken all other missions, including the international security mission that I just talked about. And you talked about the law enforcement piece of it. And later in the show, we'll see a clip from Kash Patel's hearing where he talks about the crime fighting aspect of it. So
Right.
is that what has been allowed to happen as the culture has changed through bringing in new types of people that are more politically acclimated? It seems like a lot of them lean to the left from our perspective out here as citizens anyway. This intelligence piece is really concerning because of all the tools that have been developed and put in place to spy on the American people themselves, instead of looking at us domestically to find our enemies, spies. It seems like it's overly focused on us.
Yeah, over time, I mean, we became a multi-generational, multi-ideological FBI, and the FBI leadership over the past several iterations has been unwilling or unable to reorient people as they come into the organization to FBI traditional cultural beliefs, leadership practices, and operational practices. And the last several iterations of leadership actually capitulated to the newer folks and started allowing some of this more, as you said, left leaning type of belief and behavior. But they also became much more conciliatory to certain more liberal positions that were never the positions of the FBI that I grew up in and that I wrote about. Right? We were schooled by the old breed of special agents, and we were told this is how you will conduct business. These are the behaviors that are acceptable, and they policed that. You know, the old guys and ladies, they policed how we behaved as new agents, and I think those mentors have all since timed out. They've all left, and now you have generations of mentors who have those more liberal beliefs mentoring new people. So you're seeing that cultural shift. The FBI did not do a good job of bringing people in and assimilating them into the traditional FBI culture.
Yeah, it's really frustrating because like you, I'm a 30 plus year government service guy, military on the military side, and I want our law enforcement to be successful. I want our counterintelligence to be successful. I want if there are bad people that are intent on terrorism amongst my own citizenry, I want that to be found. I think the average American wants it to be found. But the tools that we now give these folks are so intrusive and so easy to use, and the system appears like the FISA system appears easily manipulated in order to allow partisan ideology into the decision-making process. In the next segment, I want to get into some of the changes you think need to occur to mitigate that, because Chris, the FBI has always been known as a tough law enforcement force, going after people in our own country, our own citizens, like the gangs from the 1920s and 30s, and those kind of things. But they were also seen as, and maybe this is just uh, too anecdotal, but they were seen as heroes to the average kid.
No,
You know,
that's
Elliot,
true.
you say
That
the
is true.
word Elliot Ness to a person that's our age, and we were
Mhm.
kids when that show was on,
Right.
and that's what we conjure up. You say the talk about the old show, the FBI. I think from with Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. And that's the kind of heroic measures they're stable. They believe in America. They're not going to hurt me or my family individually. But the American people don't feel that way anymore. And
Well,
we
I'll
have
tell you
a
what's a
long
shame,
road
Colonel.
to travel to
Yeah,
get back.
I agree. And here's the shame of it, as I think the last couple of iterations of leadership have squandered the respect and trust that the FBI worked for decades to build. And what I was telling somebody recently is the FBI exists on two sides of the same coin. On one side of that coin, the FBI should be feared by our adversaries and our enemies and criminals. On the other side of that coin, the FBI should be trusted, and people should be glad to see us when we're around because they know that we're there to protect them. We're there to enforce the law in a fair, objective, apolitical manner. And the word of the FBI at one point used to be sacrosanct, never questioned.
Yeah.
Now the word of the FBI is worth much. I'll just say it's worth much less than it once was.
Yeah, the phrase FBI lie is pretty common amongst the American people these days. Well, we got to take a break. When we come back, though, we'll see another clip about the FBI leadership being insubordinate here with Chris Peyote on the Rob Maness Show.
Where are these leaks coming from?
Well, look, we think it's coming from inside, and we know the first leak of Aurora is under current investigation. We think we identified that person under investigation right now. The California leak, Secretary Noem, she's correct. Some of the information we're receiving tends to lead toward the FBI. But I talked to the Deputy Attorney General all this weekend. They've opened up a criminal investigation, and they have promised that not only this person lose their job and lose their pension, they're going to go to jail. They're going to criminally prosecute. So we're all over it. We got the DHS IG investigating the first one. Have a pretty good idea what happened. Can't share a lot because it's under investigation, but the IG's opened up a criminal investigation on the second one. We're sending a strong message. It's just not, giving the bad guys a heads up so they can escape apprehension. Right? We're arresting, giving the Venezuela gang a heads up so we can't arrest them. You're putting officers' lives at risk. It's only a matter of time if we walk into a place where there's going to be a bad guy doesn't care. He's going to be sitting and wait for the officers to show up and ambush him. This is not a game. So DHS and DOJ are connected at hip to hold these people responsible in a criminal fashion.
So early indications are this is coming from our own FBI. How certain are you of that?
Information leading to that. Again, I'll let the Department of Justice do their own investigation. But again, I talked to the Deputy Attorney General this week, and they've opened up a criminal investigation. He thinks the information is coming from there also, so we'll let that investigation play out. But some of the leads point that way.
Lives are at risk. That's the problem with a leak out of law enforcement at the level we're talking about here. And Tom Homan's leading a team of not just ICE folks, but other folks from all the other federal law enforcement agencies, state agencies, and even local sheriffs and local law enforcement agencies are being deputized in some states to help this team do this largest deportation operation. And they're starting with the worst of the worst. The gang out of Venezuela. That's what they were going after in Aurora, Colorado, and Los Angeles when these leaks occurred, and put all of these law enforcement officers at high risk of losing their lives. And my guest today is former FBI man Chris Peyote, an author of The FBI, or Wanted, The FBI I Once Knew. And Chris, these leaks are really, really troubling. Look, I still have hope that it's not coming from the FBI, that it's some bureaucrat somewhere buried in DHS that's acting politically. but all the leadership that's talking about it seems to indicate that's where they think it's coming from. Why on earth would somebody do this? And it has to be somebody that's operationally connected because this is an operational level plan.
Well, the one of the things I'll tell you in the three areas that I would recommend the new FBI leadership look into, the first is the cultural environment of the FBI. The cultural environment has declined and eroded over time to bring us to this point. If what Mr. Holman was saying is found to be true and accurate, it's just another indicator of how the FBI culture has been destroyed from within by the previous couple of iterations of senior leadership. Now, I will say this, there are still FBI personnel, men and women, special agents, analysts. There's still iron-willed people who will do the right thing. But there are people in the organization right now, people or pockets of people who are ideologically aligned with some of the practices and beliefs of the previous administration. And if this is true, it'll be another heartbreaking situation for the FBI. And I hope it's not true, but the Department of Justice will have to conduct its investigation and see what happened.
Yeah, what if it turns out to be true? What would you expect to see as repercussions on the individual or individuals that have done this?
I would say the individuals I once positively identified should be immediately and summarily dismissed from their jobs, and they should be prosecuted if there were criminal actions taken. The Department of Justice should seek action against these individuals because, as Mr. Holman said in his clip, they were, according to their own ideological or political positions, endangering the lives of their fellow brothers and sisters in law enforcement and undermining the will of the chief executive. And that's just unacceptable, can't happen. And the FBI used to carry the flag and be the leader in when it came to discipline and professionalism. And that's where it has to go back. And maybe when the new director arrives, they'll start making some strides in that direction. As far as them being insubordinate, I don't know if this is insubordination or, again, the political and ideological kind of damage that's been done to the FBI culture and the leadership environment. The leadership should have managed and handled this type of thing like we used to be able to, and it appears that that didn't happen. If again the reports are true.
Yeah, it's pretty frustrating. Well, we've got some hands up over in our audience. We do have a live audience. I let ask questions, so let's go ahead to our host over there, Shell. Who's first with a question for Chris?
We have Joseph, sir.
Thank you very much, Colonel. Yeah, my question is, with all this leaking going on out of the FBI, both in the first and second administration, people have really lost their confidence here. And now we're finding out there may have been 5,000 agents that were totally just tasked to J6 people. And it just seems insane. So what do you think the answer would be? What do you think we can do to bring this back to normalcy?
Well, first of all, as I said, thank you for the question. And we have to look at the culture that exists right now. It is a defective culture and allowed us to move into those channels. As far as the 5,000 people, they were involved in the January 6th investigative work. We're going to have to see what levels of investigative work were conducted over that course of time by those people to see who was involved at what levels. Not everybody's going to be involved at the same levels, and I'm waiting to see what the Department of Justice comes out with on that. The second area that you have to look at to bring the FBI back to being in a position of trust and confidence with the American people is the leadership environment of the FBI. I think we've had a wholesale systemic breakdown in FBI leadership where we have leaders who are more concerned about being liked than being effective operational managers. And we have climate surveys and we have all kinds of stuff at the FBI now. And it's what I call the corporatized FBI. They're trying to run the FBI as if it's Google or Netflix, and the FBI is a mission organization and should be run accordingly. The third area they have to fix is the operational practices, right? Is the FBI actually doing what it's supposed to do in line with its established protocols? Are they doing what they say they're doing? Are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? And there has to be a top to bottom audit of those practices.
How do we, Chris? How do we address the ideological partisanship in these employees? I mean, and we'll get into a little bit of the 5,000 a little bit more in the next segment. I want to talk about. I want to get you to teach us how the FBI is organized from the agent level, analyst. What are the types of individuals involved in that? But from a big picture culture perspective, what do you expect the next director to take on to try to root out the ideological partisanship that is obvious now in the system, and like you said, it has been for a while.
Well, as I just mentioned there, I would recommend that the incoming director has to build himself a team of trusted, aligned senior managers in the organization who are going to align themselves with the new director's vision, that of the attorney general, and that of the chief executive. There can be no misalignment between those leadership levels. He has to build that team because those are the folks who are going to help him execute his wishes and execute his objectives. After he does that, it's going to come back to those same three strategic areas. He's going to have to change the culture of the organization, and that may require dismissing more people. That may require elevating some people who show the proper leadership perspectives. That leadership environment is key because if you allow people to show partisanship or political preference, ideological preference in their work, they're going to do it because the current generation seems to wear their feelings on their sleeves versus the old time FBI agents who were stoic, professional, and took care of the business. And again, the operational practices audit. I've heard that people say, well, the FBI said they haven't changed their standards and their procedures. That may be true on paper, but it's not being properly policed, enforced, and administered by the leadership of the organization. That's where the three strategic areas of change have to occur. The director has oversight of those three areas, and that new director and his senior leadership team have to model the behaviors they want to see, enforce those standards, and demand excellence from the FBI.
How rooted was the whole diversity, equity, and inclusion mission into the FBI? What we saw in the military, and I'm in some groups that work against DEI and service academies, was it got entrenched, the indoctrination level, all the way to pre-selection for the academies, and entrenched at the basic military training as an indoctrination method. Have we seen the same things at places like the FBI Academy, or is this something that's brought in as people are hired?
It's been creeping into the organization for some time, and it became a distraction on several levels, from operations to administration to business practices across the bureau, where the senior leadership, the very senior leadership, they were more concerned with the diversity, equity, and inclusion parameters before it was called DEI. It was starting to creep into bureau decision making among the senior leaders. And it was, again, not a healthy or beneficial move, but that's where the leadership was leaning. And then, of course, over the past 4 years of the previous administration, the floodgates burst open on that. And then it became almost a primary part of operating the FBI. Investigations and operations took a second seat to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you can see where that has brought us with our latest iteration of the FBI. It's an uncomfortable discussion, but it's true that the FBI is not the FBI of old, and I think we now are starting to root out the DEI distractions, and maybe the new leadership can come in and get the FBI back on track.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why the acting assistant attorney general made the request to identify folks that are involved at all levels in the January 6th investigations, and we'll talk about that after this break. Here, we got to take another break. My guest today is former FBI senior executive assistant director Chris Peyota, author of the book Wanted: The FBI I Once Knew. We'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. Thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
The Justice Department, under Pam Bondi today, accused FBI leaders of insubordination over their January 6th investigation. Guess what? They're getting fired too, apparently, according to the Department of Justice. Now, the CIA sent the White House an unclassified email listing all the employees that have to comply with President Trump's executive order on the CIA. So they didn't want to, they'd had a big thing. They didn't want to release the names. Now they are. President Trump means business. There is a continual shakeup of the status quo in government. Folks, lace him up and lace him tight. He just got started.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Transition Tuesday. We're talking about the confirmation and the transition of the Trump administration into the FBI, the Department of Justice, the Director of National Intelligence, with my guest today, Chris Peyota, author of the book Wanted, the FBI I Once Knew, was a senior leader and retired with 25 years of service in the FBI, and has really laid out a detailed look at the FBI, what has happened to it, and has made some recommendations on a path forward. Well, Chris, we have to devote a few minutes to this effort that the DOJ is investigating the January 6 actions, not just by the FBI, but by its department too. And they want the names of all the individuals from the FBI that have been involved in these cases. One of the things that has me really puzzled, and I want to just take this again opportunity to ask somebody that was on the inside is, look, I've read a lot of affidavits from FBI agents on these January 6th prosecution cases. Matter of fact, I think I've read probably half of them, so about 600 or so from whatever. And they all have a name. They all have an FBI agent's name as an affiant on there. What is the problem with these individuals being identified by the Department of Justice? I mean, nobody wants to release their home address, their phone number, and that kind of stuff. But the names are out there, at least at the agent level.
I think part of the concern among the agent cadre is that a consolidated list of people, where they are, what field offices they're in, what their grade is, what their position is, all of that type of information in a single aggregated report, should it not be protected and released to the public, could result in reprisal from people. People will be showing up at people's homes. They'll be showing up around people's families. And not only that, but our international adversaries would love to have a consolidated list of FBI personnel that they can target and that they know who's who in the organizations. As far as looking up things on affidavits and court documents, yeah, that can be done, but we're not serving it up to our adversaries and criminal elements in one single consolidated list. So I think that's where the primary concern is, and it's going to be a listing of people that's put together under that January 6th umbrella. If I could add one thing, though, that the number 5,000 has been put out. 5,000 people may have touched that case, but a lot of those people were completing investigative leads. Check this address, go and talk to these people, do this interview, check this physical location and report back. those people are among those 5,000. And I'll tell you, a lot of those people did not agree with the January 6th investigative effort, but they were given a lawful legal order to go out and check an address. They did it. They didn't have to like it. They didn't have to agree with it, but now they're caught up in that listing of names, and they're concerned about their future.
Yeah, that's one of the questions. Another question I have about this is, look, the FBI's got what, 38,000 employees, and about what, 12,000 of them are special agents. Is that accurate? I've seen that in
I'd say
reporting.
between 13 to 14,000 are agents, and the rest would consider professional support and intelligence cadre.
So, if there's more than 5,000 people involved in this, I mean, that's quite a chunk of resource priority for this organization that has not been focused on things like the terrorists on January 1st in New Orleans and those kind of things appropriately. And that's one of my with that.
Right.
The other,
I think what you're. I'm sorry. Go ahead. There's a little bit of a delay. I apologize for stepping on you.
Let me just ask this. So I get it. Yeah, some people were just following up leads and those kind of things. But what do we do? Because when we in the military, we teach people actually to look at orders and make sure they're lawful before they go blindly following them. Now people get in trouble for doing that. And we have several thousand, up to 95,000, 8,500 for sure, that pushed back on the COVID-19 vaccine order in the military, which turned out by at least 6 courts to be declared as unlawful before the cases were rendered moot, I believe. So in the FBI, if I'm looking at an agent, even if they're just following up a lead, they know it's a January 6th case, they don't think it's right. If they're questioning the lawfulness of this order, or why wouldn't they question the lawfulness of the order if it's so apparent to them? Or is it just something, hey, this is not apparent, it's tied to this, it's my duty to go do it? I mean, explain the difference in the training background for these kind of folks.
Right. As far as the FBI goes, I mean, just like any organization, there's a hierarchy of rank and authority. And the January 6th investigation, whether you agreed with it or not, was predicated, approved, and authorized through the Department of Justice down through FBI senior leadership. And I know, from your experience in the military, there were probably several days here and there where you got orders or you got direction from your chain of command that you didn't agree with, that you thought was either ridiculous or whatever. Nobody was going to be hurt, and that you can tell. And the orders were not illegal, maybe stupid, but not illegal. And I think that's what a lot of people looked at this stuff as. And also the FBI culture now. Again, I talked about the leadership failures. The FBI leadership should have been shielding their people from this stuff, and they didn't. They let it roll right through because they didn't want to go sideways and, of course, get maybe some career damage on that. So I blame the leadership more than I blame the actual people on the ground following instruction or direction. So I want to make sure that I put that out there. It's the leadership should have been shielding their people from this, and they either couldn't or didn't. So now when it comes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and the leadership aggressive blower, and he was on one of the SWAT teams that resulted in the wife of the subject having a miscarriage the next day, and he was questioning that takedown when they raided their home, and that's one of the reasons why he became a whistleblower. So why is the system going after somebody that's raising the red flag and saying, hey, something's not right here? Number one. And then you can go ahead with your answer to that question and what you were going to say. Go ahead.
No, I was saying the FBI over time has not, we don't have a culture of strong leadership that will stand and have that steel backbone on certain things anymore. That was kind of beaten out of the FBI over the last couple of iterations of leadership. What we have is a cadre of people who are scared. They're scared of getting in trouble. They're scared of administrative problems. They're scared that they'll be, given maybe unfavorable assignments. They're scared about their career progression. They've been kind of beaten into submission or adequately sedated over time, to where that they don't question those things. Like the old time supervisors, there would be knockdown, drag out, screaming matches over things, and that just doesn't happen anymore because we don't have the same type of folks in charge. I know myself. I'll talk about myself. I used to get into some pretty heated discussions with people when I was at FBI headquarters about certain things that I thought were being done either improperly or that were out of line for us as the FBI. But again, certain senior leadership will give an order, and then it has to be followed because again, either it's not illegal, it may be stupid, but it's not illegal. I don't like it, but again, where do you draw the line for being, again, independent investigators versus insubordinate investigators? That's a tough line to walk, and I think it's a sliding scale depending on what side of the argument you're on.
Yeah, it is a tough line to walk, and I think that's where this whole investigation on the January 6th participant really creates some bright lines, and it also has to be nuanced because of the issues that you and I both have raised here. Well, let's go ahead and take a question from the audience before we go to our last break. Go ahead, Shell.
We have Cookie, sir.
Hey, good afternoon. Been a great show so far. So question I'm retired out of law enforcement, but all my years of working with any federal agency, it's always been good and cordial, helpful. Where do you see, or can you point to maybe an administration or the tops of the leaders in the FBI when all of that kind of changed? And maybe how quickly it progressed, but also you think with Kash Patel coming in, do you think he can make this change with the FBI within at least the 4 years that he would be there under Trump?
Okay, so as far as the change goes, and thank you for that question, I think it started under the Obama administration where we started seeing an open disrespect for law enforcement in the law enforcement sector by that administration, and even by the Attorney General that served under the President Obama. And then after that administration had kind of opened that very unfortunate door, we started seeing more and more of that behavior where things became more politically sensitive. People were afraid of saying and doing things and offending people, as opposed to objectively, apolitically, and professionally enforcing the law. That's where I saw it happen. It was how can I put it? It was disappointing to watch as I was moving up through the organization. And I think our leaders were, again, no longer able to navigate that political environment appropriately like the old-time FBI could. And again, the old-time FBI wasn't perfect either, but they were, I think, better at it than the current couple of iterations. And I think under, the President Trump, for a few years, we had a kind of a recovery. And then in the last 4 years, it's just been a complete disaster. And law enforcement's been emasculated and just completely neutered in some areas. And that's where we are now. We have all the old-time lawmen were pushed out, and we have a lot of people in place now who subscribe to these new ideologies from the last several years. So as far as Kash Patel goes, I think Mr. Patel has if he makes it through the confirmation process, which it looks like he will, he has a very long and hard uphill battle to regain that FBI trust, respect, and confidence from the American people. But I think he can do it because he wants to do it. He's coming from outside the organization. He is coming in with a set of ideas and marching orders from the chief executive and the new AG. I think the environment is ripe for change on a foundational level at the Bureau. So I think Mr. Patel is going to be successful. I just think that he's got to go in, again, as I said earlier, he's got to form that senior leadership team. He can't do it himself. And he's got to show up as the leader of the FBI. He's not there as a punisher for the FBI. He is there to pull the organization toward better times, give us a better FBI, better led, better focused.
Yeah, and I think we're going to take a break here, one last break, Chris. And when we come back, we'll hear from Patel during his hearing on his ideas on the way forward for the organization. And I agree with you. He's going to be the leader of the FBI, not the guy to come in to punish the FBI. We'll be right back with Chris Piota, former FBI agent, and it's Worldview Tube's Transition Tuesday. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, well, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.
The two themes that, if I'm confirmed that I have for the FBI, are really just going back to keeping it simple. One, let good cops be cops. 100,000 drug overdoses, 100,000 rapes, 17,000 homicides. That's only with 70% of the precincts reporting in. That is violent crime exploding out of control. And I'm going to let good cops be cops and put handcuffs on the bad guys and put child molesters in prison and put murderers in prison and make sure CCP fentanyl doesn't kill another one of your constituents. That's track one. Track two, to restore the trust in the FBI. That has degraded, not by my opinion, by the Gallup poll, that only 40% of Americans have trust and faith in the FBI. It is a cataclysmic failure in leadership to get to that point that did not happen over time. And so what the FBI must do while tackling violent crime and protecting Americans' national security and our sovereignty is work with Congress, Republicans and Democrats, to expose any government corruption, provide government accountability through transparency, and get you all the documents that you are the custodians of. The FBI reports to Congress. If I am confirmed as FBI director, I will report to Congress.
Welcome back to Transition Tuesday on the Rob Maness Show on Worldview Tube. My guest is the author of Wanted, the FBI I Once Knew, Chris Piota, a former senior executive assistant director of the agency. And Chris, I think that was pretty plainly clear what Mr. Patel was saying there. He wants to steer the agency back to fighting crime and protecting the national security of the United States and away from this stuff we've been talking about, the politicization, the ideology, the cultural things and those kind of things. And I think he comes from, on part two, the reporting the Congress piece, because he worked in the Congress for the House Select Committee on Intelligence, I believe, when Devin Nunes was there, and that he saw FBI leadership basically and essentially refusing to give adequate information to Congress when they requested it, and ultimately told some lies to Congress with some of these guys. So I think those are two good things. It's dramatically different than what he has said in his book, on a podcast, and those kind of things. But he's got some challenges. Number one question I have for you, and we've talked about this a couple times during the show today, is where does he get those senior leaders? It's kind of tough when you've had a culture raising people through an organization that is behaving in the way that it is.
Well, as far as him getting a team put together, he's going to have to bring some people with him from outside the organization. And he's going to have to possibly rely on maybe some retired folks to come back who are not looking for a Washington, D.C. career, but they love the FBI. And like myself, they've spent many years there. I spent a quarter of a century of my life there. And these people that he could bring back with him, they still believe in the old FBI, and they would come back as not only trusted staff members for him, but they would be mentors to the people who are on their way up, bring them back to the core values and beliefs of the Bureau. So that's what he's going to have to look at. He's going to have to look at maybe bringing a few people that he's already in contact with, but he's going to have to look at a trusted group of folks who know how the FBI runs and know how the FBI's business is done so that they can execute his wishes, make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. And not only that, but you're not susceptible to all the hocus pocus and happy talk that they're going to try to throw at them on several levels, right? You're not. If I was sitting at a table and with him and they started talking, I would just say, "All right, stop." I know that's not true. Let's try again, right? But he's got to have those people with him to be able to do that.
That's happening as we speak with Pete Hegseth over at the Pentagon. I'm sure, having worked in that staff, especially
Absolutely.
with the civilian structure over there. I guarantee you, they're blowing lots of unicorn smoke.
Absolutely. Everything is butterflies and rainbows and good to go, boss, right? And you know it's not true.
Yeah,
and he needs that team with him.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. He's going to have to bring a team in from outside, but at the same time, he's got to be able to find some people that are still in the organization, because you can't fire. I guess you could fire everybody, but then you'd have a gap in mission pretty severe. That's difficult to create when you're being placed in there to fix it and make a really correction like this. So how do you expect that he is going to address this January 6th investigation issue to not look like the Punisher, but really, I mean, I think it was Mr. Bove that said in one of his letters that if you were all in on the January 6th political investigation, then you're not right with the current president of the United States agenda that he was elected to enact, and you're going to have to leave. How does Cash, once he gets confirmed, go in there and deal with that, while at the same time he doesn't want to be the Punisher? And I don't think he does. I've watched his confirmation and his recent interviews quite a bit, and he's very focused on getting the agency back to where it should be.
Well, I think he's got to go in and work very closely with the Department of Justice. Right? The Department of Justice, people forget that the FBI is a subordinate component to the Department of Justice. So he's got to reestablish that relationship with the department where they are going to do this review together. They're going to gather information. They're going to decide how they're going to proceed together. And then any decisions made are going to be his as the FBI director, and they're going to be also backed by the deputy and attorney general. So I think it's going to be that unified approach that's going to win the day. He's going to be able to have that leadership team with him as well. Like I said, it's going to be very important to him so that when they're sitting down and charting a course forward for the FBI, they can look at people or pockets of people and say, these people no longer fit into the FBI's ideology that we want to reestablish. They did what they did, and they are going to be excused. And we're going to get some new people that we're going to mentor, that we're going to bring them back to traditional FBI values, your fidelity, bravery, integrity. And these people are going to learn how to run the FBI this way and move away from some of those practices. It's going to be a mentorship approach. It's going to be a leadership exercise, maybe some organizational development. But he's going to have to be ready to excuse some more people, unfortunately, who may have been making decisions based upon their personal ideological or political positions. So I think you're going to see some more dismissals at the FBI once Kash Patel's on board. And I think they're waiting to do some of this stuff till he is on board. And as that's the right thing to do. He's going to be the director. He's got to make some of these decisions, and he's got to decide what he finds acceptable behavior by folks who were involved in the investigation.
Yeah, and his actions are a message in and of itself that are going to affect the downstream culture of the organization a lot. Well, let's take one more
Absolutely.
question from the audience before we get to the end of the show. Go ahead, Shell.
We have Colonel Gannon Burton, sir.
Colonel Rob Maness, thank you, Chris. Thank you so much for your service. And man, you got my fangs out on this. So I believe the true thing that we're dealing with here is a government that has become so corrupt, and the FBI is going to have to overcome this, is that it has sat on crimes against humanity, against children. The Epstein list is out there. The FBI has tapes of high-level politicians, foreign leaders, and other people on tape, and crimes that they can't even they can't even present to the public. And I think, my question to you is there an outlet that we need so that when FBI agents find crimes of treason, like Joe Biden taking actual bribes, right, that they can get to the public when the DOJ obviously is controlled by the executive branch? And it seems to me like this country, all of us are dying because of this. We've got rigged elections. Tina Peters, a Gold Star mother, is in jail right now for exposing voter fraud that the FBI has evidence actually occurred in Colorado, but they're not coming forward with it. You see where I'm going with this? These are crimes. And then with the vaccines and the other things we know that are crimes against humanity, FBI agents have this. They're sitting on it, but they have no outlet. And obviously with the new DOJ, hopefully that changes here very quickly. But going forward, post this administration and in perpetuity, is there an outlet or some way that when these crimes are available, that the agents can actually present them and not have it just be covered up by the politicians who themselves might be on tape doing horrible things to children? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. And the answer I have for you is, unfortunately, I'm not sure what kind of channel you can put together that would be durable, objective, and not subject to influence or censorship, depending on what the power structure is in in subsequent administrations. Right now, our current administration is pushing for transparency. They're pushing for honesty. They're pushing for objectivity. And I just don't know where an FBI agent can go outside of the Department of Justice chain of command, if that chain of command hasn't been compromised, to push some of these things forward and not have it be censored or sat upon, whether in Washington, D.C. at FBI headquarters or in the field by their own local management. I think that's where the FBI culture has to be remade, to where, hey, FBI agents and their leadership are called upon to make hard decisions. They're called upon to do dangerous things, go to dangerous places, and engage with dangerous people on our behalf. We can't have an FBI cadre that lives in fear consistently for doing what the American people expect from them, which is to be that objective, honest FBI. Whether, sometimes you have to march through hell to be that objective, honest FBI. And I think where we have to do is get that culture back. I wish I had an answer for that. Great question. I don't think I have an answer that I could offer that would be let me put it this way: it would not dignify the question properly. So I wish I could answer that.
Time and time again, Chris, you go back to the leadership issue. Cash does that in his testimony. I've done that.
Right.
Everybody I talked to about the COVID vaccine leadership failure in the military on the DOD side, we go back to the failures of leadership, which gets to that culture that we've got to change and reinstill the values of keeping our oaths to the Constitution, fidelity, those integrity, those kinds of values. And reinstill those in leaders so that can be carried forward again, because it's collapsed completely. And I think that's where Colonel Burton's coming from. Well, man, thank you very much. We're at the end of the show. I appreciate you coming on. Folks, you can go to Amazon and get the book. It's a great book. I've read it. And where can folks follow you on social media, Chris?
The social media, I'm on the X platform, and I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm not a big social media guy. That was kind of frowned upon throughout my time with the Bureau. So I'm just now kind of starting to move into that world a little bit, and I'm sorry for it.
Yeah, we all had to build this stuff after our careers in the government. So I think that was a good way to be connected. Well, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it, your time, and appreciate your book, and appreciate your service to the country. God bless. Tomorrow,
Same for you, sir. Thank you.
Tomorrow's Whistleblower Wednesday. We'll be talking about USAID with Cheryl Chumley. She wrote an article about it and about her book. It's going to be a great show. Man, this USAID thing, it makes the FBI guys look like a bunch of Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts that are on top of everything instead of what the reality is. And it's going to be an interesting show. I'll see you then on the Rob Maness Show.